At NBA Brothers, also known as Mike and Chris Thoughts and Theories, are here with sportscaster for the Washington Wizards, Chris Miles. So, can you tell me about your career journey and how you became a sportscaster?
Well, it started off with playing basketball at Rice High School in New York, and I realized I wasn't as good as some of my teammates who were McDonald's All-Americans and had the opportunity to play in the NBA. So I tried to come up with an idea for a career that would work out for me, and broadcasting really fit. I interned at ESPN and at the NBA offices, and I really found a good group of people that I could learn from, and I've been doing it since.
What's the best thing about your job?
Well, the best thing about my job, I would say, is that it never feels like I'm actually working. I'm a self-admitted sports addict, so when I'm not actually at work, I'm still working, meaning, I wake up in the morning and I go get some shots up, and I call my friends and I say, hey, where are we going to play today? And I try to figure out where I'm playing basketball, and when I'm not doing that, I'm reading about all sports, really, and then I'm on TV at different times. So that's basically my lifestyle, and I really enjoy it, and I can't believe sometimes that this is actually working out for me.
What characteristics make you a good sportscaster?
I think the most important thing is to be a student of every sport. And one thing I had to learn as a former basketball player was to learn the ins and outs of the NFL, to learn the ins and outs of NASCAR, to learn the ins and outs of baseball. Talk to people who were just as enthusiastic as I am about basketball, about other sports, and truly that's how I developed kind of a higher learning of all sports. And once you do that, it becomes really, really easy and a lot of fun to make sure that, you can talk on television, because if you don't know what you're talking about, or if you haven't done your homework, it's really difficult to go in front of a lot of people and act as if you're an expert. You have to actually be an expert. And I think that's the key to it all, is to make sure you do your homework, to make sure that you're passionate about it.
In your opinion, what are the top 3 skills a good sportscaster needs to become successful?
The top 3 skills, well, I find that in order to be on television, period, a lot of people say, how do you do it? You get so nervous. But I think it's about bottling up the energy, understanding that once the camera's on, it's no different than talking to your friends about different sporting events that you would normally do. You just have to make sure that you have a good command of the language and that you read a lot, because I think those things help you to really develop an on-air presence. That's number one, is to make sure that you are very, very good at speaking in front of a group of people. So when I was younger, I spent a lot of time speaking in public forums and making sure that I was comfortable in front of an audience. I think that's the number one thing. The second thing is to become a great writer. I know a lot of times people think of newspapers, magazines, online, but truly, if you're going to speak in front of a camera, you should also be a good writer, because those are the people that really excel. When you think of Keith Olbermann, or maybe John Anderson, or maybe my mentor, Stan Durrett, those guys are excellent writers, and that's a very overlooked thing as a sportscaster. And the third thing, I always tell people, and this is something I had to learn on my own, to be yourself. Everyone looks up to someone, and they want to be that person, or they want to feel like they have to be an on-air personality. But truly, if you do the first 2 things on that list, the third part will come, because you have a unique personality. You are who you are, and that will come across eventually. And if people like you, they'll like you on TV as well.
What do you know now about the job that you wished you knew growing up?
I wish I knew, when I spent all that time playing basketball, that there was a career that would last way longer than any playing career that I could have prepared for at a younger age, because truly, I didn't prepare for a career in television until after I realized I wasn't going to make it as a professional basketball player. But I think that if I had known that when I was younger, I would have prepared for it a lot more, and maybe had a quicker start to my career. But I think that's the only thing I would have done differently, because everything else I've lived in 10 different states. I've worked in West Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, New Orleans, now here in D.C., and I enjoyed every stop on the way. So I think that's the only thing I would have done differently, gotten an earlier start.
Is your on-air personality the same off-air? How does it differ?
I think I'm the same person. At least I hope that I am. And what I mean by that is I try not to be a different person when the camera's on. I try to treat people every day the same way that I would like to be treated. And then when it's time to go on television, I try to make sure that whoever I'm interacting with, treat them with respect. And I try to learn something from them the same way I would try to learn something from them when I'm not on camera. What I mean by that is I don't try to attack any of the people that I interview. I don't really try to interject my own opinion too often. I try to get the facts from people and really try to let them tell their story. And I've found that really works out. And in some cases, people tell me how refreshing that is, because truly as an on-air person, your job is to get the truth and to get the story out, not necessarily push your agenda. And I think sometimes people get that confused.
What was your most memorable career moment?
I would have to say there were several different moments, but top 2 or 3. The first one was the opportunity to get to know Michael Vick before he went to prison, and to get to know him a little bit afterwards. Because before he went to prison, he was a certain way, and I was working in Bluefield, West Virginia, and I crossed paths with him a couple of times, and I didn't think he was the nicest guy in the world. And then I want to say 2008 or 2009, every year that was, or maybe it was 2010, he got released from prison. And I talked to him. Everything was about his son. Everything was about making sure the people around him were treated a certain way. And I saw a different person. I think that's the beauty in sports sometimes, is that when people make mistakes, it's a public forum where they can almost be rehabilitated, be a different person, and you get to see people grow. So I think Michael Vick and seeing his growth was one that I truly enjoyed seeing and being around a bit. And I would say the head coach at the University of Virginia, Mike London, when I got to talk to him, he's not exactly the biggest public figure, but when he got the job at UVA, asked him why he was a head coach and what motivated him. He said that he was a police officer in Richmond, and that a kid no older than the age of 17, maybe 18, pointed a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. He said that there were no bullets in the gun, and luckily, the kid ran off. And he said, I can't be a police officer anymore. I have 6 children. I got to make sure I'm around for them. But what can I do to prevent this kind of thing? Or how can I be a better man before this problem occurs? And he thought about being a good head coach, being a good role model. And I think that's something that's overlooked a lot in sports. Those stories. There are a lot of good coaches, good men that want to be good role models to the kids. And I think that's the best part of it.
Wow. What's the best basketball story you ever covered?
I mean, there's so many. One of the more interesting ones is I covered Virginia Tech for 3 years when they did not make the NCAA tournament. It was interesting to become friends with Seth Greenberg, who now works at ESPN, and as he went on his rants and all of the pain that he went, like they beat Duke and North Carolina in the same week. They knocked off a number 1 ranked Wake Forest team, and they did not make the NCAA tournament. And to just be around that, it was a crazy time and a crazy ride. But I think for me right now, the biggest story for everyone else to see was Anthony Davis. He was drafted by the New Orleans Hornets at the time, and I was there. And I'm good friends with the general manager down there. And I remember when Anthony came in, and he's a little kid. Like, he might as well be 13 years old, And I remember before the draft, the year after he was drafted, say he was drafted in 2012, so the 2013 draft, I had the opportunity to just meet him and a couple of guys in the room. I said, hey, who's going to go number 1 overall? And he looked at me, And he's like, it's going to be Anthony's 2 years in a row. And I'm thinking, okay, this big kid doesn't know what he's talking about. And sure enough, when the Cleveland Cavaliers took Anthony Bennett, I looked at him, and he had this face on like, you better believe it, I'm a basketball genius. And from there, I tell people that story and about how, I watched him practice for the first time. I just know he's a superstar, and everyone else is starting to see it. So to know that about someone before everyone else is a pretty cool feeling.
What motivates you as an individual?
I think for me, the thing that motivates me most is just being a kid from Harlem when Harlem was truly a bad place to grow up. I think I've always been motivated by working harder and I don't want to say my past haunts me, but just the idea that, hey, I escaped a bad environment, got a great education, and have a great job now. I'm motivated every day. I'm happy when I wake up because everything seems like I have a positive outlook on things. It's not like I wake up and I think, oh, this is a bad day because I have to do some work. I think this is a great day because I'm able to put in some work and I'm able to have health and work out and, meet some of the great people in sports and get to know them and go to some of the greatest events. And I've covered a Super Bowl, Final Four, NBA playoffs, a tremendous amount of bowl games, and have traveled to some of the greatest places, Green Bay, San Francisco, and just seeing Lambeau Field and seeing some of those places. I think it always keeps it in perspective that, man, I used to live my life within a 20-block radius. Now things are really great. So that motivates me every day, I think.
What is a typical work day for you?
Well, that changes with different jobs. For instance, a lot of people just think, okay, what hours are you working at work? And I tell people that my particular job is a job that is always happening. What I mean by that is as the Wizards pregame and postgame host or a fill-in anchor for Comcast Sportsnet, I might be scheduled to work 3 days a week for 8 hours. But really, if I just worked those hours, I wouldn't have the job that I have because there would be someone else that would be willing to put in more work and do a great job at those time periods. So for me, I wake up in the morning. I go to several different websites, make sure I read what's happening. I send out a text or two to different agents and different general managers to make sure that nothing big is going to happen before it happens. And then, I make sure I study the game, and I also help my older brother coach a team to make sure that I'm involved with the game from grassroots. I mean, there's so many athletes and players that I've had the opportunity to do great stories on because of how hard I've worked outside of work over the years. For instance, I got my start at a small almost a cable access channel in New Jersey, and all of the athletes that I covered then are now in their prime in their NBA and NFL careers. I mean, Brian Cushing to the McCourty brothers from St. Joe's to Michael Jenkins. I mean, there's just so many guys, and it's interesting because, the story, I could tell you a story about Junior Gillette, who plays for the New Orleans Saints. If you have the new John Madden football game, he has like a 93 rating. But I went to interview him in the locker room. He's like, I know you from somewhere. And I couldn't figure it out. He couldn't really figure it out. Well, it turns out that he also went to St. Joe's with he played basketball on team with kid J.R. Inman and the McCourty brothers. And I never interviewed him. So I covered him for a year, and he remembered my face, but we couldn't really put two and two together until I asked him where he was from. And here's a guy that flew under the radar in football and basketball and is now in the NFL. So I think the cool part about it is being involved with it at every level. Things always come full circle. When you have that kind of bond with someone, they're willing to give you better stories.
About J.R. Inman, he's my coach for my AAU team. So, yeah.
Exactly. So, and that just shows how small of a world it is. I mean, if you end up in the industry And, 10 years from now, and you tell a story, and who knows where I'll be, like, oh, yeah, I remember Chris, that ain't you, coach. He actually covered him. There's all these connections when you stay involved, and I think that's the beauty of sportscasting that most people don't get to see, or just the world of sports, because it truly is a small family-knit kind of thing. So when people are involved, they do care about each other, they do care what happens with people's careers and life.
That's so cool. Who is your role model in life and why?
I think in order to do anything in life, you have to have several role models. But for me, my biggest role model was my mom, because she had me when she was 15, and she was sick, and she died by the time I was 15. So for me, to see all the sacrifices she made to make sure I got a good education, to make sure that I, was focused and wasn't a knucklehead, I think that's my biggest role model in life. And after that, there's just several people. There's my mentor, Stan Verrett, who works for ESPN, and the original person was like, hey, you should give this a shot. And I still talk to him consistently now. There's the people at the Student Sponsor Partnership that paid for high school tuition and helped me to really develop an education that allowed me to do what I'm doing today. And even, some of the people that are involved with my college education. All of those people are my role models. I think a lot of times in life, Charles Barkley once said that, hey, I'm not a role model. And I find that to be 80% true. Your role model should be people that are in your corner and are around you every day that you can see and grow and learn from. And I think that a lot of times people have this misplaced perception where they look at someone and they want to be like that person. And there's a difference between wanting to have a jump shot like Michael Jordan and wanting to be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's not the nicest guy in the world. If you want to play basketball like Michael Jordan, try to play basketball like Michael Jordan, but try and be a better person. And after meeting LeBron James several times, I can tell you that he's a guy that I think understands that. He's really surrounded by people that are close to him, and he's his own person, even though he's become the world's greatest basketball player.
What is the most difficult part of your job?
I think the most difficult part of being a sportscaster, just in general, being live, is learning that everyone makes mistakes. That when you make a small mistake, you let it go. The worst thing that anyone can do is to go back and try to correct themselves and stutter and stop and start over again. And I've learned from even when I was younger, and I spoke publicly, if you mess up a word, everyone does. But you only notice when people try to backtrack a little bit. I know that's a very small thing, but it really is a big thing in general. And to make sure that I always have my facts straight. I think those two things help me to really be good at what I do.
If you had a blooper reel from your on-air moments, what would be on it?
Well, there is a tape somewhere from when I worked in Bluefield, West Virginia. It was maybe my second or third football Saturday. And when you work in a small market like that, you have to shoot all of your video. And I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, drove up to Morgantown, West Virginia, which is about 3 hours away, and shot a football game, a college football game. And it was at noon. Drove back 3 hours, so that's a 6-hour day of driving. Shot a high school football game. Got everything that I needed off of the feeds for Virginia Tech and all these other sports. And I get the show together, and at the very start of the sportscast, because it's live, one of the tapes did not work. So my 6 hours was wasted. And then they put like what we call the OTS, the box over a person's shoulder that you see as they talk. They put that over my face. And every time I went to a video, it was the wrong video. It was a terrible show. And so at the end, I remember Reggie Bush had said, and Reggie Bush scores a touchdown. That was all that you could see on the show. And and everyone thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But
Yeah.
for me, I was a little distraught because I'd worked so hard, and it was one of my first shows. I didn't take it so seriously, but that would definitely be on the blooper reel with all the messed up video and the OTS over half of my face, and me just kind of guessing what highlight was going to come up next.
What do you think the NBA should do to increase its fan base?
I think the NBA should stay true to its roots. I think they've done so much to increase the fan base, especially expanding internationally. And I know recently they were mentioning that they would have some games start at 10 a.m. to help out internationally. I like that idea.
Okay.
Because there's so many games that come on at night. But if you had a couple of weekend games that were early, 10, 11, maybe noon, or maybe a couple of days during the week, attendance would be down in the local city or the local area. But at the same time, it would help internationally. I think that the NFL is not a major sport internationally, and I think the NFL is the best league here in America. But I think the thing that makes the NBA what it is its international presence. And I think that would be a good idea. That would continue to grow that fan base.
What do you think will be the big NBA stories in the upcoming season?
Well, right now, it's already circulating Anthony Davis for MVP. And I'm going to jump on that bandwagon simply because I think that it is great, and he has a great head on his shoulders, and his family's great. I also think that the Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving situation in Cleveland with LeBron James returning and having that group together, I think that's going to be a big story, but I think it's something that's so obvious that everyone knows about. I think the underlying story that no one's talking about yet is the possibility of Kevin Durant moving, maybe coming to Washington, D.C. and playing for the Wizards. I don't know if he's just going to play out his contract or if there is going to be a lot of trade speculation, but I think that's something that is not on anyone's radar right now. I also think that Greg Monroe and Eric Bledsoe possibly being traded will start to be a big story this season. Those are two guys that aren't really huge stars, but if you put them on a major team, let's say the New York Knicks or even the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think that they become huge stars, and I think that becomes a huge story. So I think Kevin Durant possibly being moved, and that's something that no one's talking about now. I think Eric Bledsoe and Greg Monroe being moved also would become huge stories if they move to big contenders.
How would you describe your career path? How hard was it to achieve your success?
Well, Isaiah Thomas had a saying where he's like, there were a ton of guys better than me when I played basketball growing up, but I worked hard, and I tried to stay focused, and I made the right decisions, and also I was lucky. I certainly feel like it's the same situation with me when I think about the fact that I have the job as the Washington Wizards pregame and postgame host, that there's so many ups and downs that when you get a great opportunity, you realize, gee, how did I get here? This was a great journey. This was fun. So I think for me, it's just the idea of bouncing around from Bluefield, West Virginia, to Roanoke, Virginia, to Columbus, Ohio, to even the station in New Jersey and New Orleans. I think I'm just grateful for the opportunity and seeing that entire journey. I could have never mapped that out in a million years.
What advice would you give others that share a similar dream?
I would say don't be focused on the end goal and be focused on trying to get better every day, because what happens is a lot of people make decisions to try to advance their career, and they skip out on developing their skill set. And it's like that with anything. If a guy's a great shooter, but he doesn't stay in college long enough to work on his speed or his conditioning or his ball handling skills, he goes to the NBA too early, he's not good enough. And I think there's several guys, I think they stay in college an extra year or two and can really help them in the NBA. Stephen Curry is one guy that no one talks about doing that, but he led the NCAA in scoring and then came back another year. I think he got faster. And I think what the same thing with sportscasting is, there was a time where I'd make more mistakes because I hadn't anchored a lot. Well, now I've anchored in so many places. I've done live shows without a teleprompter, at Lambeau Field or after the Super Bowl, that now I feel like I have enough experience that I can be placed in any situation that I have the confidence that I'll succeed. And I think you need to make sure you go to places where you'll get opportunities before you try to do something that's on a national or even a regional scale.
Hello, Mr. Miles. This is Chris Vargas from at NBA Brothers, Christian's Corner.
Hello, Chris. You have a great name, by the way.
Thanks. So, what do you love about basketball?
I can't really put my finger on it. I've been playing since I was maybe 4 years old, and we could dunk on the trash cans outside on the corner of 141st Street and 7th Avenue. We play on fire escapes before we could reach the hoop, and I've just always loved it. Even now, I'm still obsessed with the game. I love everything about it, from the strategy to the fact that you have to run, but you have to be strong. You have to be physical, you play above the rim, or you can be a shooter. There's just so many different things about it that I've always loved. I just love the competition of it, too. So I've just always loved the game of basketball, and I really don't know why. And that's the thing I also love about it, that I don't really feel like I need an explanation to love it. I just do.
How does it feel to interview NBA stars?
It's a great feeling in the sense that when you talk to some stars that really enjoy the history of the game or understand the game, and to see guys that actually just made it. There are a lot of people that don't have that opportunity. So for me, I like to talk to the guys that seem like they get it, and it's just great to be around the game and to talk, all of the aspects of it with people that are living it out every day, and to really have a grasp of what's happening consistently.
Okay. What is it like to be an announcer for the Wizards?
Oh, it's great, especially being that they're good. The best part of it is the excitement of close games. And, you think about most people, they might go to work and they're doing something they don't like for 6 or 7 hours. I like every minute of it. From the second I go in and we talk about, okay, what did the Wizards do in the previous game? What went wrong? What's going well? Who's injured? Who's not playing well? Who should step up? Who's going to have the key matchup for the night? And to do it consistently is just so much fun. And you really get to examine all the other teams, and you find stars on other teams that you don't know about. Like the breakout player, I think, for the upcoming season will be Giannis out of the Compo, out of Milwaukee. So just great to know about a lot of guys that may even fly under the radar if you're doing your homework.
So it's a lot of excitement.
Yes, it's always exciting. I think even on bad teams, there's always someone that's worth watching.
All right. So how would you describe Wizards fans?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
How would you describe Wizards fans?
Oh, Wizards fans are a growing fan base. So what I mean by that is they've suffered so many losing seasons that they're very skeptical of their team. But I think right now the excitement is growing for this upcoming season because they're expected to be good for the first time in 7 or 8 years. So I think the Wizards fans are very excited right now.
Hi, Mr. Miles. This is Mike from at NBA Brothers again. So, is there anything you would like to add that we may not have covered?
The thing I'd like to add is that I think it's great that you guys are getting such a good start in doing this, and that you're using technology to your advantage. And to stick with it because it's very rewarding, it's fun, and my advice to you would be never to make a decision because of money, because that will eventually come, and it will be more than you will expect. So always just focus on being a good storyteller and doing a great job, and great things will come for you.
Thanks, Mr. Miles.
All right, it's great to talk to you guys.
Is that NBA Brothers signing off?